Hello, hello.
Greetings.
Did you want to scoot over a little bit?
I can
You,
scoot
you
over a little
seem,
bit.
I'm no longer contagious, so
Oh, you don't have to tell everybody all about
you
it.
can scoot right over. Scooty, scoot,
I
scoot.
see you a little bit there before we get started.
Scooty, scoot, scoot. All right, we didn't test sound beforehand, so I'm pretty sure Emily would tell us if our sound is not working. All right, sound is working, she said. She said,
Excellent.
excellent. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. I feel like I need to say hello to you.
It's been a hot minute since we have seen each other because because you have had COVID. It's not funny.
It's not funny.
It's definitely not funny. I thought it was funny the other day that somebody said, "Is that still a thing?" And guess what? Yes,
It
it's
is.
still a thing.
It is. Yeah, so like this is good because I have
It's going to
my
be a thing for a long time.
I have my my sexy voice on because that's what I used to wait until this time whenever I worked at in my corporate job to re-record my voicemail.
Right. Yeah.
Because
That's the best time. Yeah.
I always felt like I sounded like a little girl. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we've missed you. Um So yeah, so I don't know for sure that this is my first time getting it, but it might be because I've never
I do
officially.
remember a couple of years ago, you're like, oh, I don't feel so good. But within 24 hours, you're like, yeah, it went away worse than it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. Given that the experience that I've just had over the last 10
And
days
you're
or
like,
a
I've
week,
never had it.
yeah, I've never
Never
had
had it.
this. I've never had this.
Yeah.
I've cared for people that
Yeah.
have tested positive,
Yeah.
which is why I assumed that I had it. But this was definitely either a new strain or, my time had come, my number had come up. But yeah, I have no idea how I could have gotten it.
I don't know. I guess we'll never know.
Guess we'll never know.
That's one of our sayings around here. When we know something for sure, we say, I
Hmm.
guess we'll never know. So we can
So
avoid
where
it.
where do you think maybe it was a recent airplane trip that may have given
It could have
where I
been
may have picked
something.
that up?
Yeah, could have been something
Or
where maybe you
uh
were at a concert. You often say that you won the tickets to a concert.
yeah, well, I didn't win tickets, but I did purchase tickets to a concert.
Mm, I got a
And
funny feeling I know what concert that was.
all I will say is it was worth having COVID for. That's all I'm gonna say.
You said at one point, I had my mask on, but then I felt Taylor needed to hear me. She couldn't hear me. She couldn't
Yeah.
hear me
Listen,
personally.
listen, I'm gonna be real honest with you. I brought like those super safe earplugs because I'm over 50 and we can't mess with hearing loss at
There's a
this
bunch
point.
of 13-year-old girls
And
screaming in your
listen,
ears.
that is offensive. There were 13-year-old girls there, but there were a lot of women,
They're-
women, women, and men. This woman is a cultural phenomenon.
She is. Tay Tay, the Swifties. How many Swifties do
We're
we
going to
have?
talk about poetry today, and I think we could talk about, I could do a whole live stream on Taylor Swift and her poetry,
That's
but
true.
I will not
That's
right
true.
now.
That's true.
Maybe for the future. Maybe Emily and I could do it because Emily and I are
Yeah,
the
the Swifties.
Swifties.
Swifties and
But yeah, so I had my headphones and I had my mask, and all of 38 seconds into this show, I completely lost my mind. Like literally lost my mind. I was no longer wearing any protective gear. I was sobbing uncontrollably. And I'm like, I'm so mad now because like I watch back like the live stream or the videos or whatever. And I'm like, I do not remember that moment of the concert because I think I may have blacked out, actually. I think I may have blacked out. So, so we'll never know where I got COVID
never
from.
know. We'll
But
never
I
know.
have a strong feeling of where it was, somewhere in Madrid, Spain. But anyway, that's a story for another day. But I think that it's apropos. Is that the word?
It is, if I know where you're going with this.
Because we're going to be talking about futuring from the fog. And
In the fog.
I am definitely still in the fog, the COVID brain fog. But you know what? I can't think of a better mindset to approach a live stream with because, I don't know, for those of you that know me, know us, I am a little bit sometimes neurotic about stuff, just a little bit. I'm a little bit of a control freak, just a little bit, just a little bit. And so sometimes going into these live streams, because these live streams, for those of you that may be new to our live stream, is our, one place where we talk about really being unhinged, unplugged, like, we're always professional. We're never going to be non-professional, but in our other modalities, our other channels, our other, pathways to communicate with people, we often have clients in the room or potential clients. And so we tend to like, mind our P's and Q's, and we're known to have a professional outfit here. We don't mess around, right? So, but the live stream is the one place, the Wicked Opportunities live stream is the one place where, it's live, things happen. I can't wait to get back to recording the podcast as well, because that's another place where we tend to be a little bit more unscripted,
Yeah.
But even though that's the brand of the live stream and Wicked Opportunities, sometimes my controlling nature still like, you know, shakes its ugly head, or whatever the right term is. And so I can say with all honesty that today there's none of that. I'm sitting here just trying to be present, just trying to be present with all of you. And yeah, normally I would be like, what are we talking about in the live stream? Like, I have to have some sense. And we sat here 5 minutes before, and Frank's like, here's what I'm thinking for today. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Let's do that. Let's do that. So
It's a good time because I could get away with anything that I want to.
it's definitely emergent, which was supposed to be my word of 2024. I think I've been sort of emergent this year.
You definitely have.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. But yeah, we're excited to be featuring From the Fog today.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we just a couple of weeks ago, I guess, did in partnership with Futures Friends, which is run by Sarah Owen out of Soon Futures, and Akash Das. You don't want to say these names wrong.
I know.
When I said my name,
I know it's
wrong.
I know
But it's wrong.
It's hard. That's my biggest fears is offending someone by saying their name wrong. Like, so I literally trip myself up because I get so worried about it that I like say words wrong that I know how to say. Yeah. Like that's where I'm at with that. And right now I would not trust myself to say my own name. So that's where we are right now
with Akash Das. And then, of course, we had Thomas Claflin on there.
Yeah, I don't know. Why are we sharing this information about a panel that sounds way more amazing than what we're about to have them witness?
It's not.
No.
You say things on this that I couldn't even say on the panel.
You pulled together an amazing, a once in a lifetime.
It was good
panel of thought leaders from literally across the globe. I believe that you were up at 4 a.m.
I was up
to moderate this panel, and I know that you're getting to like talking about like what you all talked about, but I will say that recording is coming out very soon.
Very soon.
So you all, if you all missed it live, which many of you joined live that webinar, but if you've missed it, then you'll be able to catch it.
It'll be released first through Futures Friends because it was literally hosted by Futures Friends. It was a Futures Friends event, and then just in short order, days afterwards, we will release it as well. Yeah,
so if you subscribe to our newsletter, you can get. So tell them who was on the panel, and then Emily can drop in the chat. If you're not a subscriber, how you can become a subscriber to our newsletter. We don't spam. We just give a lot of great content, but go ahead.
Yeah, let me see if I can remember who was on this panel, because it was a big panel.
Emily might be able to.
And everybody spoke for maybe 5 minutes, but Dr. Marcus Bussey, who, amazing.
I mean, when are we going to go visit him is all I need to say, because I feel like
Bondi Beach.
Listen, I feel like we have so much respect for him. And I have to say, he doesn't know this probably, but like whenever he comments or likes one of our posts, it is like there's
Elvis
confetti.
The building,
there's confetti falling. We get so excited. So just so you know, like that matters to us. I know it might be petty. I don't know, but like the fact that he like has read our stuff, like he loves the stuff. I mean, didn't he author.
Well, it's actually a part of our discussion today
Oh,
because
yeah.
he wrote an article not long ago called Featuring from the Ruins or the Future of the
Mm,
Ruins. And it was based largely off of this discussion we're going to have today because we wrote articles about this and we've done things
yeah.
about this. And then he's been thinking about this. Don't get me wrong. It's not like we
Yeah.
completely inspired him, but it's
No.
like, he was like, yeah, I've been meaning to write this for a long time. Frank and Yvette are saying this now too. Let me pull from the articles that they've written and write this journal article. And you can find it in, I think,
Yeah.
the Journal of Future Studies, the Futures from the Ruins. It's a brand new one. But yeah, so Dr. Bussey was on there.
Hmm.
She had put it on here.
Yeah.
Zan Chandler, who we love and who
Hmm.
is on the Global Foresight Advisory
Hmm.
Council, and is a professor at Ontario College of Art and Design's Futures
Yeah.
program. She was there. Thomas Klafka was on there, and he's been writing some amazing articles recently from Germany. I think he lives in Berlin, but maybe it's a different German city. I think it's Berlin though. And if you look him up under Creative Destruction, which is his Substack channel, he's been writing some incredible articles that align exactly with what we're saying today.
Hmm.
But like some other things too. So you want to read those articles for sure. Our good friend Pablo Reyes in Chile, who runs Memetica and Artefacto with Andrea Busquets. And he's amazing, and he talks about pro-sociality. We had Barbara Furlans on there, who is also in the Global Foresight Advisory Council and works with Renee Rohrbeck. And I
I'm
mean, this
telling
this
you,
was a panel,
you've
man.
done 5 panels from this
I
one
know.
panel.
We had Akash Das, of course, and he's spoken with the Dubai Futures
Mhm.
Forum, and he's just all over the place doing all kinds of amazing things. And then we had Shahana Chattopadhyay, and she is writing a book now and has been writing some amazing articles about pluriversality and toppling systems of domination and hegemony. What a panel that was. And I can't wait for everybody to see it that wasn't able to be there. We had about 120 people attend,
Yeah.
which is healthy. We had, I think, 400 sign up. So
Yeah.
there's another 300 people that are going to get this recording right away. And then I hope everybody in the world gets to see this because
Yeah.
it's quite amazing and it aligns perfectly with what we're talking about
So this
today.
will be like the appetizer.
It is.
And then when
Yeah.
you all get a chance to see that recording, that's sort of like the full meal to chase it
Yeah.
and
So
give
now
you even more. Yeah.
warning.
We're 10 minutes in, 12 minutes in now. We're giving a warning.
Yeah, because we, had some fun and we like to,
Witty banter.
but warning now. This is not your granddaddy's futures. And I think we may have said that on Wicked Opportunities Lost. So people who've attended before, like, yeah, I know this is what you guys do here.
Yeah.
But it's just so important at this hour that we be honest and talk about this and not hide this under a bush. Although we're going to read a little bit of Nora Bateson today, and she talks about going into the bush, which is sort of opposite from what I just said, which is interesting. But featuring from the fog is a very different way. And we wrote an article not too long ago called The Illustrated Futures, which I think is like 21 pages long. It's a little mini book. It's meant to be an article in an upcoming book on transformation, but I think it might have to be broken into a couple of chapters because it's ridiculously long. But it talks about, what did it used to mean to be a futurist? What are the stages we've gone through? As a matter of fact, Wendy Schultz, we include her in the article because she said, as futures, might have launched in the 40s or 30s, it's gone through these different stages.
Yeah.
And it went through its stage already of linealism and mechanization and data science and all this. And today we got a lot of new people getting on in the corporate world who are defining features that way. And according to Wendy Schultz, we've already been through that phase. And we're in the phase of features now of complexity.
Yeah.
And that's what we really want to talk about today, because in the fog, it's really foggy.
Yeah. It is interesting, that notion that we've already been through this, that Wendy says. Because I often think about foresight, and I don't know if maybe there's other fields like that too, that are like not a merry-go-round, but like, in the playground, that little spinny thing that children of the 70s will remember as being an absolute death trap, and you would just spin yourself
If you
around.
have a scar on you somewhere that got sewn up, it was from that little spinning wheel thing with metal shards sticking out.
I mean, absolutely. Like,
and you see how fast you can spin people, and then they fly off and hit their heads on rocks, and you're like, that was great. Let's go do something else.
And the parents, I mean, nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Or they're
Well, I was
smoking
just
a
watching a
cigarette
TikTok where they were showing just clips. They had put together all these clips from the 70s of all the stars going like, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Can you imagine that nowadays? But back in the 70s, they had to remind parents on Sunday night, have you seen your kids since Friday? And where are they? Do you know where they are?
Anyway. So spinny, one of those spinny things, whatever, however your brand of spinny playground equipment, whatever that is. That's what it makes me think of. It's like, we talk about meeting people where they are, and I feel like sometimes foresight, and again, it'd be interesting to think about if there's other fields like this too.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That like, someone's like merging into traffic and they're merging in, and when they get on it, they're like, oh, okay. Because I can speak from my own experience, 10 plus years ago, right? So
Of course.
former finance, professional that sort of stumbled upon foresight, as many people do in corporate America, either through consumer insights, through marketing, through a number of different fields. I came in through it, interestingly enough, between finance and HR, and was like, oh, okay, I'm going to make sense of this by attaching it to something I already know, which is strategic planning and 5-year plans. And I know that those systems and processes are broken. So here I am going to attach this, because I'm obviously not going to blow up the whole Disney financial system. Like, that's
if you wanted to try.
Right.
Probably, yeah.
So like, I'm getting on the little Ferris wheel at that merger point, not knowing that Wendy and you all were like super ahead, right? Because you're like, oh, we've already been through the quantification. Have you not heard of the Rand Corporation?
That's right.
But it's like,
That's right.
It's almost like a little bit like the Groundhog's Day movie, where it's like people are having to repeat history because like they almost have to, it feels like, maybe they don't, but it feels like they have to learn that part and like learn it from where they are.
It's not a terrible analogy, because like, if you remember Groundhog's Day, of course, I'm thinking of the Bill Murray
version. Of course, yes.
He would get irritated with people when he went back for the 60th time, and he was like, don't do this thing, and what are you doing? Bye. And they're like, oh, this is the way.
Yeah.
This is the way.
Yeah. So while we want to be respectful and meet people where they are, and I don't think we want to like tell people that's not how you do foresight, and like discourage them.
Not super helpful.
It's not helpful. However, at the same time, when we know better, we do better.
Well, so here's the dichotomy, right? Because it's like, if you tell people, I'm coming in like the gentle lamb and I want to meet you where you are, and all, they take that as I'm just going to keep doing the same thing.
I know.
There's no challenge to that whatsoever.
I know.
And so, if you went to the opposite extreme and said snake, lion, and all, then they reject that.
There's a balance. And I share that because I think in the live stream, the podcast, really everything that we do, we're always trying to support the practitioner, the person that's out there that is sparked by foresight, that realizes that there has to be a better way to do the things that we do as a society, as organizations, as individuals, as families, as communities. And so our goal with everything that we offer, when we talk about democratizing the future, democratizing foresight, is really about equipping you. It's about equipping you to be able to go back and apply this thinking and help bring others along. And so we recognize that, like, everybody's at a different sort of stage here. And I don't like the term maturity, because that makes it feel like there's a hierarchy and that there's
somebody's
it's
immature.
not like I when I graduated from college and went back for my master's degree, it was in finance. And the professor that I had through a lot of my coursework at the University of Florida, go Gators, I had him for my thesis, and I had him, and I never forget, he used to say, I am forever and always a student of finance. And I love that idea of being a student of foresight. Like,
that's right.
We're always learning, and you are like the best example. You're always looking at the adjacencies, the things on the edge. You're always looking to really challenge our thinking, whether it's through a spiritual lens, through a lens of nature, through a lens of evolution,
right.
and ultimately understanding that we're, wanting to make this work and wanting to make change to our existing systems. So understanding that there's at some point there's a rub there that has to there has to be destruction, there has to be pain, there has to be if you're just enabling what we're already doing,
Yep.
if you're doing it, if you're selling more of the same thing, if you're doing more of the same thing, then you're probably not doing foresight.
You're probably not doing foresight. And ooh, people do not want to hear that.
I
I
know.
know I don't want to hear that. I have been where I didn't want to hear that either. But I think with, the idea of a polycrisis and a metacrisis, and some people saying, although as Dr. Bussey says, this makes me want to throw up, saying we're living through an Anthropocene. I agree that I don't think
Yeah.
we're really living through an Anthropocene, but it makes sense why people are saying that, like, oh,
Yeah.
the influence of
Yeah.
humanity on climate and all of these things. As futurists, we have a responsibility to address that and not just say, like, I don't know, I work for this thing and I just want to talk about how there's certain trends that might up the game of the number of candy bars we could sell.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I totally get it if you work for the candy bar company,
it's
but
intoxicating.
It just doesn't work.
Listen, being a futurist can be a little bit intoxicating. It can be a lot of things. Being a futurist can be like really sad and really lonely, and people don't listen to you or whatever. Being a futurist can be really intoxicating because we all know, and I'm talking to you, we all know that it doesn't take much for us to be that sage on the stage, for us to wow people with our scanning knowledge. It's old hat to us. It's not really new news to us, but we know how to turn on that futurist charm, how to show up and be the life of the party, pulling out all kinds of crazy nuggets about virtual pop stars and AI this and look, we all know how to do it. And I know why we do it sometimes. I know why. Like everybody wants to be clapped for. We get it. We get it. We get it. But at some point we have to recognize that that's not foresight and that true transformation means that we have to get out of the top 10 trends and the pop futuring and even the scare tactics.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll say something even stronger than that. I agree 100%. Yes. And a reckoning is coming because if we claim to be futures thinkers, democratizing futures thinkers futures thinking across the world, and then there are people who are getting hold of this who are already social activists and they're engaged in stopping Iceland and Japan from saying, yet as they did yesterday, it's okay to kill more whales, and the polycrisis and the metacrisis and climate change and all this. A reckoning is coming for this field that, hey, I thought you guys said you cared about the future, or you were thinking about the future, and all you're thinking about is the same future that we're already on, the same path we're already on.
Yeah.
So a reckoning is coming for the field in that if we're not willing to be the voice that addresses this is not the future we want, and this is not the future that we can want, and this is not the future that is going to be healthy for living systems, for planet, for people, et cetera, et cetera.
So at its core, futuring from the fog requires us to embrace this idea that removing the fog or eliminating uncertainty should not be the goal of the futurists.
Right, because it's inside the fog or that place of liminality. We'll talk about that in just a second, but it's that place where all the goodness is. And I think that when we go back again to Wendy's 5 stages of the future, the initial one was, how can we make sure that we know what's coming and get rid of all of the fog and wipe away everything and just have this clarity on this one shiny spot,
right?
So that everybody knows exactly what we're supposed to be doing and we all fall in like cookie
It's so
cutter.
fun. It's so funny because like I think most everyone in practicing today, as they call themselves futurists, know enough to say, we can't predict the future.
That's right.
Like the vast majority are now
it's
in
an
alignment.
axiom. They know at least to say
To
we don't
say
predict
it.
the future.
To say
However,
However,
we're trying to predict the future.
However, the way that their actions, to your point,
absolutely trying to
is
predict the future.
just trying to predict the future.
Absolutely.
It's trying to
Absolutely.
eliminate the uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's not enough to
let's
say
stop.
it.
Let's stop lying to ourselves.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Let's stop pretending.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Tell me what's coming.
Yeah, here's the, that's why we stand in line for 2 hours at South by Southwest to get into X Futurist thing where they just released a 14-volume trend report because we want to go like, let me read about what the future will be. That's called predicting the future, whether we like it or not. We're constantly trying to do that because we're aligning with systems that are outside of the fog. The fog is not a place where you can predict anything because you can't see to predict. And we don't like that. We go, gosh, Frank, surely you know that can't be a good thing because we'll stumble into each other and we might fall off a cliff and we might da-da-da-da. But will we? Because the way I see it right now is that with all the clarity that we've got, we're falling off the biggest cliff we possibly could fall off of. Tell me why that's happening. How come we've got more information than we've ever had before, more data than we've ever had before, more clarity than we've ever had before, and we're falling off of the biggest universal cliff we possibly could? Tell me why that's happening. And so that's why we wrote the Alive article not long ago. And this blends into what I'm saying because the place of the fog is a place of discovery and the liminal place. So Alive, A-L-I-V-E, the L is for liminality.
Yeah. And in Alive, you could read the whole ebook, but everyone talks about VUCA, and I just want to mention, I think it's important, inherent in this is this idea that we have to be fearful of the current environment. We have to be fearful of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
It's freaking us out.
It's framed as if we have to eliminate it back to like trying to get rid of uncertainty, trying to get rid of the fog. And the way that you've reframed it as Alive, really, it's not just about having another acronym. It's about understanding that our relationship and the way that we frame the current environment really directs our actions ultimately.
It's really all about mindset. And so that's why every interview that I've done over the past 2 years, Sophie Howe, Future Generations Commissioner for Wales, Camilla Mazzini-Allister, I just interviewed day before yesterday. That won't come out for another month, but you're going to be blown away. And I just got finished doing Rian Eisler. They all keep saying the same thing, but in different ways, that we have to get off of the treadmill. We've got to see a new way of thinking, and we need a rise, our next rise of consciousness. So if you listen to Nora Bateson, who we're going to talk about a little bit today, also Benita Roy, Jonathan Rowson, Dougal Hine, and the list goes on and on and on of today's philosophers who are having the greatest impact, they're all saying that what's happening right now is a liminal space to our next rise of consciousness, or we reject that and fall off the cliff.
We revert back.
Yep. Well, there will be no reverting this time.
So
the temperature in Phoenix was 130 degrees.
Yeah,
there'll be no reverting this time.
So I think, to your point, we reject the fog. We run it. Well, I mean, because if you drive in the fog, you could crash, right? Because I can't see, right? Because we're relying on our traditional senses and the dominant narratives and the current thinking,
it's
right?
So powerful because it's like when you're navigating by the dominant instruments, you'll crash in the fog. When you're navigating by a different set of instruments, which is what futures thinking is all about, the bio-psycho-social sacred dynamic of futures thinking.
I had to cheer ourselves. That's good.
We need a different set of instruments. And in the fog, you operate by a different set of instruments. And if we keep trying to drive with the dominant narrative in mind, then we are wrecking already. We're wrecking right now.
Yeah.
And actually, we're causing a bigger collision because we're like, here's what we're doing. We're looking at trends and the future to reinforce the relevancy of a dominant narrative. That's how we're handling foresight and futures thinking.
Yeah.
And again, there's a reckoning coming because if we're saying that we're thinking about the future as alternative futures, then we have to be challenging this dominant narrative. And this is the soapbox I've been on lately. And I had this conversation with Camilla Mazzini-Allister in our recent interview. And she said, I came to the same conclusion. And then I saw you writing about this, and that's why I was attracted to the writing that you were doing. She's way above me. She has 3 master's degrees, 2 PhDs. 2 PhD. How do you finish 1 PhD? She's written 5 books. And then she's so humble because she's like, you're the most amazing person I've ever met. I know that's a lie. But I think she's genuine because she's like, I feel a kindred spirit with you.
Listen, it's we would have a far easier time, friends, sticking to the traditional, quote unquote, or the popular or the commercialized version of strategic foresight.
We joke about it all the time. I'm going to let you finish, Taylor. But we always say we could have called ourselves Anchor.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll keep you exactly where you are.
Right. We'll drop the big anchor. You won't go anywhere. But instead, we called ourselves a different kind of anchor. Kedge was the original name of our company. And that spirit of Kedge stays with us.
Yeah.
Because it's pulling yourself into the unknown.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that, even as a firm, as individuals, we walk the talk. Like, we are constantly challenging ourselves to transform. And so we know firsthand that can be really, really scary. We have a very successful firm for over a decade now, doing the work that we've been doing with amazing organizations and individuals.
I stop and think sometimes the work that we've done, huge long-term pieces of work, building the largest futures team in the world. We did that over 48 countries. That company still has the largest futures team on record in a case study ever created. And these big, huge pieces of work that we've done.
But at the same time, we've had to really ask ourselves, like, how do we reconcile the fact that, even though these organizations are made up of individuals whom we love and are, largely well-meaning, that, if we're not pushing for transformation, which, again, I think, the word transformation gets misused, has gotten sort of taken in some respects too. It's not always about, becoming the butterfly. I mean, transformation itself means destroying something else to make way for something new, to it could be destructive. It can be, we hope that obviously what we emerge from is what we aspire to and what we want to create in more equitable futures. That's our goal.
That's right.
But in the midst of that, it can be sometimes violent. Sometimes, I mean, when you're trying to dismantle systems of oppression and power and dominant narratives, it's not pretty and it's not easy and it's not without sacrifice.
And it can be destructive, like you said, but it's at least foggy. At the least.
At the least, it's foggy.
At the least.
So leaning into
that liminal space.
Yeah, leaning into this idea that the goal of foresight is not to illuminate uncertainty or to make people more comfortable, with uncertainty. It's about really embracing the fact that it is in this context of uncertainty and what we have called the fog here, that is where the source of possibilities really exists.
That's right. And I think that you saying that leads me to want to say something else. It's not like we're creating the fog.
No. Yeah.
I think that's important.
No, it is important.
People are like, oh, so you guys want to create a bunch of fog.
No.
No, I'm saying that the fog was always the reality.
It was always there.
The other thing's fake.
Yeah.
That's a made up, plastic, mechanized, linearized world that when we slam up against it and it comes after us because it's coming for you.
Yeah.
Then we go like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And, chaos and volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity. That is an environment you made by not aligning with living systems. Living systems are foggy.
Yep. So we were going to talk a little bit about sort of a Nora Bateson primer, if you will, for those of you that maybe have read her work or have experienced her through Frank's many interviews with her, or maybe this is the first time you're hearing of her. Either way, this is a good way to distill the information either for yourself or for others that you're, attempting to sort of bring along and expose to this type of thinking.
That's right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do this the other way around.
Okay, sure.
Because I think this is a great way to set up.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do sort of a Batesonian futurism, which she probably would not like that I said that, but
she doesn't want to be.
Don't put me in a box. Don't put me in a box. But if we were to say, and this doesn't really exist, but we're creating it right now. Let's say that there is a Batesonian, a Gregory Batesonian, and a Nora Batesonian futurism primer. It probably would be well defined by this poem she wrote called Kinky. And you can go watch in the last interview that I did with Nora, her read from her new book, Combining. She read the whole poem, but I'm going to read just a teeny.
Just be careful when you Google the words Kinky and Nora. Just go ahead and Google her whole name.
We might have tried to do that and it doesn't work out so well.
It's a different search result than this poem.
That's right.
Okay.
So this isn't the whole poem. It's just the part that I'm trying to get across here. She says in the poem Kinky, when you see the clarity of a future horizon, just stop there for a moment. Because that's what we're trying to do in future. See the clarity of a future horizon.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get the telescope out. I want, the crystal ball. I want to be able to see clearly.
Yeah. That's what we do as futurists, right? We're trying to help people see the clarity of a future horizon. What's wrong with that? I've done that hundreds of times for companies around the world.
Lots and lots.
Yeah. She says, when you see the clarity of a future horizon, turn quietly into the thick bush. I love that she wrote quietly too. She's like, it's not a loud thing. It's like just, you disappeared into the fog.
Tiptoe right in there.
Go into the thick bush because the clear path itself is a warning. Which is heavy because it's like, if this path is clear and you can see it trodden on over and over again, that itself is a warning to you.
Yeah, it's a dominant name.
Look, oh my gosh, this is where everybody's been walking before. Woo, woo, get off the path. It's heavy.
That's heavy. It reminds me of something my dad used to tell me all the time when he used to say, like, when I ask him for advice about like, oh, what should I do? He used to say, if you're ever, you find yourself at a path where there's, a couple of options, choose the one that makes you scared. Like choose the one that it's not like you haven't done before.
Emerson, right? I chose the path less trodden, right?
Yeah.
Right. This is exactly what she's saying.
Yeah.
So she says the clear path itself is a warning, trimmed and tucked by Procrustean impulses of industrial habit. The industrial habit over and over again. I'm telling you, I've been doing foresight for a long time. I know what I'm talking about here. That the trends that people want to hear about are the trends of industrial habit. It's like, well, does that, how helpful is that trend to me? Does it keep us in our industrial habit? I'm just trying to 10x my stuff, you know? So show me the trends that will help me 10x my stuff. And I want to ignore the trends that say that I can't 10x my stuff, Instead, find the vital tangle of broken lines and crags. A fest, I love how she said this, a fest, like a festival, right? A party, a fest of possibility in the festering. A fest in the festering.
I like that.
That's where the possibilities are. And, it reminds me of Bayo Kumalafe because he talks about the germ and the virus. And all, because that's good. That's good stuff. It's in the festering thing where all of the life is accumulating, and it's where we've cleared it out, put the peroxide on and cleaned it up, and it's all nice. There's nothing left. There's nothing left. The anthropologist Erin Manning calls this the clearing. She wrote a beautiful book called Into the Clear. And she says that's what colonialism and secularism does every time. And before it gets started, it says, like, let's clear everything out. So we have a clear space, a clear field, clear out the forest. I was telling you the other day, did you know that Iceland used to be covered? There was not a square inch of Iceland that wasn't covered in trees. But if you see pictures of Iceland today, which is beautiful, waterfalls, there's no trees. Because the Vikings came and cut down every single tree. Every single tree. And don't blame the Vikings because we do the same thing today. But they were like, oh, we have to plant agriculture and do all this stuff. And, right? So hi from Bulgaria. Awesome.
Hi, Petya.
Petya.
And hi, Peter.
Yeah, I saw New York is watching too. So she just writes, a fest of possibility in the festering. We're going to get back to the possibility in just a moment. The future is kinkier than we thought. So that's how Nora frames the future, because she says, like, look, the well-trodden path, the trend report, stay away from it, get away
Mhm.
from it, because that's not where you'll really find the future. And I I won't fly into this, but let me just sort of like put a little bullet point thing here of what I wanted us to try to get through. We'll see what happens. Warm data, Symmathesy, Aphanipoiesis, ready. Those are all big words that Nora's made up
Mhm.
that helps us to get away from our well-worn path, the warning of the well-worn path,
Yep.
the well-futured path. Or, as Dr. Bussey would say, or Sohel would say, or as many have said, used futures.
Mm.
And I know you and I talk about used futures all the time. And
Yeah.
it's a well-known thing in the futures field, like back in the 50s, you go to the World's Fair and they're like, the future will be bright. The oven, the
Yeah.
future comes out like a
And the
robot, a
jetpack.
jetpack. And so those are used futures because it's like that's a future that's been reiterated over and over, the outdated
Yeah.
future. But we still sort of cling to this. Where's my jetpack? Where's my flying car? And those are
Yeah.
used futures. But I think the reality of what Sohail and Marcus and others are saying is that the used future is not just outdated futures, but it's really the dominant narrative that we just keep feeding
Yeah.
with our foresight.
Yeah.
We really foresight to the dominant narrative
Mm.
instead of foresighting away from the dominant narrative.
Yeah.
And a phrase that has just been like my phrase for the last 5-6 years is systemic transformation. Because I just really believe that unless as futurists we're involved in systemic transformation, there's something else I want to say here too that I think is really important. But unless we're involved in systemic transformation, I'm not sure how much futuring we're really doing.
No.
But also, I just want to put a little side note in. This is a PSA. I don't think that you and I are the bad guys. I think it's the systems.
Yeah.
And we are so used to saying, like, see, humans are intrinsically evil and humans, like, make systems
Yeah.
of domination, which go read some Rehan Eisler and you'll find out that's absolutely, utterly false. Our primary systems were all cooperative. They were partnership systems, they're collective. This system that we've gotten in is actually, we've gone backwards, this domination system. And we don't want a future to this system. We want a future away from this system, because that is featuring away from the system will get us into systemic transformation that breathes life and love and care and empathy and all those things that we just think are fluffy. We've made them fluffy because they don't serve our system.
Mm.
To this system, they're fluffy. To living systems, they're reality. Empathy, love, care, reconciliation, joy, peace, hope, those are all part of life.
Yeah.
And if you think those are fluffy, that speaks volumes about the well-worn path. The well-worn path says, don't think about those things. They're fluffy.
Yeah.
They're not, that's not the rubber meets the road. That's not hard systems. That's not how we get water to people through pipes. And that's not how we build agriculture. It is. It actually is. And the way that we're doing it now is so off kilter. It's just bizarre. But I think for what we're saying here, we could talk about systems all day long. That's not this program. What we're talking about is how do we future towards a future of love, empathy, care, hope, all of those things, right?
Yep.
So anyway, warm data is how Nora puts it, because you said we're going to sort of do a Batesonian.
Right. Just a real quick, because I think these terms get sort of bantied about, but I feel like if you just give basic definitions, I think it can help people understand the relationship between these concepts
right.
and foresight and futures thinking. So warm data.
Warm data. Hi, Marcy from Maine. Maine.
We're going to be in Maine soon.
September. We'll talk about that in a moment. So warm data is Nora's big concept that most people have heard of. If they've heard of warm data, they either know Nora or they didn't know that this was where this came from, but it's from Nora Bateson. And she says, look, we've got data, we've got big data, we've got thick data. It's mostly based on quantification and numbers and those kinds of things, right? But warm data is more like the meadow that contains bugs and the grass and the dirt and the deer, and he comes and they go to the bathroom in there, and then the log falls down and the worms eat the rotting wood and all this. And all that's important to the health of the meadow. And you can't take one piece out without the meadow not being whole, holistic. Right. And so warm data is really the idea that we can't separate numbers away from our communication and bumping into one another
Right.
and going to the grocery store and driving and the breeze and the weather and all of this stuff together is the quant and the qual that makes up this warm data, this intricate dance of life. And that if we start thinking in this type of data, we'll really understand life better. But then when we put data in silos, it's not just siloing life, it's worse than that. It's
Yeah.
destructive to life because life doesn't silo.
Yeah. It's so interesting because, like, again, just going back to, my professional career and historically, where I sort of started my path, just thinking about the application of Excel, right? And the fact that you like physically put the data in individual cells and in columns so that you could more readily add them and subtract them and analyze them and graph them and so it's another example of like the system reinforcing the behavior because it's
That's
like
right.
because the question is going to be, well, how do you expect us to run XYZ if we don't have the hard data to be able to XYZ? And
Yes.
it's just a reinforcement of what is. And so
It's a loop.
and you become, and what happens is that you eventually hierarchy the different aspects of the meadow. And you say that if it's not quantifiable and it can't be put in a spreadsheet, it's not as valuable
That's right.
as that can be, right?
Right.
It's not a it's not a bug, it's a feature, friends. It's like
It's
this is literally how it's built. And so soft skills, fluffy, like
all that comes from that
all of
reinforcement to
those.
you that there are
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
soft skills. There's no such thing as soft skills. That's
Right.
but that it doesn't exist.
Right.
It's false.
Right. It's why
False.
I just always laugh because it's like when people discount, the mindset or the qualitative nature of foresight, I can always tell that they don't really understand the field or these concepts because ultimately what foresight is a change process. And if you've ever tried to get, a 9-month-old, a 2-year-old, or an 80-year-old to change, that data alone will never do it. Like
right.
persuading someone logically rarely, if ever, results in long-term behavioral shifts. It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
You
If it had, we would have done something about climate change.
exactly. That's the quintessential example,
Yeah.
right? So it's the emotional component, it's the mental component. And in our current platforms, application system, I mean, AI is the extreme example of this now, right? Where we're now going to not just quantify, we're going to somehow replicate the entire human experience and brain in this supposed miracle technology, which is absolutely ridiculous.
It's
And the fact that
ridiculous.
even is a conversation, but it really is
I know.
because people really think that they are going to,
Yeah, the
and they're going
zeitgeist
to
do sci-fi movies.
attempt it,
Yeah.
which is
Oh, they're tempting it.
which is scary. But anyway, let's not get off. So warm data, it's about those interconnections, the context,
Yeah.
the all of those
That's the
different
only way to
aspects.
fully understand what's
Right.
happening.
Got it.
So that's important to futurists because we really want to understand what's really unfolding, what's really happening. We have to think in terms of warm data, not big data only or thick data. They have their place, but their place is inside the warm data, which is a larger context,
Yes.
right? So then Nora talks about Symmathesy, which is a word that she's constructed to take the place of systems, because in her view, she says, when we say the word system itself, it already does a number on us.
It's true.
Yeah. And so she's like, so I just created a new word, Symmathesy, and that probably will do us a number on you eventually too.
Eventually.
She's like, but Symmathesy is really about mutual learning contexts. So one context learns from another, and one context influences another as that context also influences that. And one context helps you to abductively define another context. in terms of metaphor, myth, right?
Yeah, it's complex thinking. I mean, you
Complex
you
thinking,
have
yeah.
to have complex thinking in a complex
And they're
environment.
learning from one another.
Yep.
There's no
It's
separating
a feedback
context.
loop.
It's a feedback loop. It's a
Yep.
positive feedback loop in terms of Symmathesy, because these contexts are learning from one another and transforming one another. And we don't like to think like that, because we're like, we have this context we work in,
Yeah.
and it's not learning from anything else.
So
It's
interesting
absorbing anything else.
because I think both of these concepts that you've talked about already to us in these last few minutes are interesting, because I think it's very easy to sit here and say, oof, this is like, I can't get my, organization, my leadership to like think about a trend. I'm going to get them to think about
Symmathesy or
Symmathesy, good times.
yeah.
But hang with us,
Yeah.
because if you really, really sit with these concepts, these are the ways in which we break past the dominant areas. This is actually giving us the gift to say, look, if we just stop and think for a second, the context influences each other. And so how can we leverage the fact that that happens? That's happening. And it's our ill-fated attempts at isolating these ideas to try to make sense of them and try to put them in a box that has prevented us from being successful, from, because humans are amazing. We're amazing creatures.
We're actually pattern makers.
Our intuition, our innovation abilities, our creativity is amazing. It's that we're not fully embracing, or we've forgotten, I should say, these sort of natural, organic aspects. When you describe this, it is literally the way forward, like recognizing that this is happening and leaning into it. Can actually help us get out of
that's right,
these issues that we face.
Yeah, because we had the same questions at the end of the panel that I was telling you about at the beginning of our session here. Foresight at the end of the world.
Yeah.
And Zan came in. She was the only one to actually say it in the thing, but I was waiting for somebody to say it. And she goes, I recognize that this doesn't mean the physical end of the world.
Yeah.
It's the end of one way of thinking into another way of thinking.
Yeah.
And so we've reached foresight at the end of one world and foresight for another world. And you watch this panel. Zan's thing is beautiful. She's like, and so let's talk to the ancestors for a moment here. And let's talk about, what it means to be ancestors of the future. Stuff is so beautiful, indigenous knowledge. And so then let me just add to that this idea of Aphanipoiesis.
I'm already going to tell you this is going to have to be a part 2 of this live stream.
Oh yeah, and then we're almost done.
And we've not even gotten past our first page of notes.
But
if you all are interested, let us know if you want a part 2, because we can. This is great conversation that's needed. But I also want to be respectful of the time that we had set aside. So
we have to going. We've got 8 minutes. We got
keep going and just record it and then release it later also. But go ahead.
So the idea of Aphanipoiesis and readying really go together. Because Aphanipoiesis is the idea that the elements below the surface of life that we haven't captured in a trend report yet, are more important than what's in that trend report, because they tell us about the process that's unfolding. But when we only look at trends and the mountain range that's right in front of us, what we're doing is we're turning our attention to object orientation, just objects, time,
individual data points,
snapshots in time.
Yeah, when I was learning accountancy, they would describe the different accounting statements. You didn't think we were going to go here, did you? And I think there's a relevance here. So it's like the balance sheet is a snapshot.
Yeah.
So like, which is, some usefulness, whatever. At this point in time, these were your assets, these were your liabilities. Whereas the income statement tells the story of what's happening in that time frame.
Yeah, the process, the larger process, right? And we can look at an even larger process, because Alfred Whitehead, the great philosopher, talked about process biology and process philosophy, and ultimately what became known as process ontology. Ontology being a big fat word, meaning to be instead of to know, the epistemology of something. Ontology is like being. What does it mean to be? Who am I?
Yeah.
What are we becoming? You know?
To know is that whole let me fight against the fog.
That's right.
Because I have to know the answer. I have to know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
As opposed to the be. Yeah.
That's right. And so this reading, Nora says beautifully, I don't have the exact quote here, but she has a whole article on reading. You could look it up online. It's reading, and there's a subtitle to it. But she says, like, in the reading, there are more possibilities for the future than there are in the knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And then she poses a question: is it possible to till the reading to be a people who are actually gardening the reading instead of tending to the knowing? Because if that were possible, there would be more possibilities of transformation for us than what manifests already.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Like, the answer is it is possible. That's what futures thinking is supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so if we can instill in more people the joy of tilling, of being in that readying space, of if we can encourage people outside of the dominant groups, those marginalized communities, those people that today don't feel like they have agency, if we can encourage them and teach them how to be in that readying space, how to till that space, think of not only the number of more possible futures, but the diversity of those futures that recognize ancestral knowledge and diverse cultural perspectives and unique ideas.
That's right. That's right. It's all that gets left out of our dominant industrial futuring.
Yes.
Because if it doesn't today, if our futuring doesn't tend to the relevance of the dominant knowledge and system of the dominant narrative that we're in, which doesn't contain all that knowledge you just talked about, indigenous knowledge, you're out. Ancestral knowledge, you're out. All this other stuff that's on the fringe, you're out. It's got to line up with what we already know to be true, and then your trends are useful to us.
Yeah. So
that's not foresight.
So as we're closing out our hour today, we will do a second part or a third part, or however many parts it takes.
We'll do a second part because I want to really get into, and we've lost time already.
Yeah.
And I got the little dragonfly flying around here.
Well, what I was going to say is we'll do a second part. We'll
let you talk about agency.
Yeah, we'll let you all know when that's going to happen. We'll schedule it. But I also want to share that if this has spoken to you, if this has stirred something inside of you, and you are seeking more opportunities to have these conversations and have community with others that want to explore this way of foresighting that doesn't lean on the dominant narratives. And we hope that you'll consider joining us this fall at the Transformations of Natural Foresight Retreat.
Where we'll be talking all about the dragonfly.
Yeah, this intimate setting is an opportunity for you all to engage in conversations like this, but truly make it an back and forth. Obviously, on the live stream, it's difficult for us to have that that back and forth sort of community element, but these are the topics that we will, be talking about and sharing and having community with.
Yeah, not just talking and sharing. It's like we're going to walk through the forest and we're going to map, the pamphlet, and we're going to have shared meals together, delicious shared meals together that have a purpose and a meaning to them, stone souping together, and then, created a new language through art where no one can talk, and just drawing the future together. And all of that will be a part of all of this as well. So it's just going to be amazing.
So if you have the opportunity and want to explore these topics further and be physically present with us and a handful of other incredible thought leaders from across the globe, we hope that you'll consider joining us for that experience. If you're looking for additional opportunities to train, we have 2 more offerings of our Foundations program later this year. One in person in Los Angeles on the future of media, and one online, live online for a global audience in October, November. And that one, that focal issue is yet to be determined. And you can help us determine what that focal issue is. Starting, I think, later this week, we'll be sending out ways that you can help us determine what we focus on in that think tank. So thank you so much for joining. If you're watching this on the recording, we hope that you also enjoyed it. I feel a little bit more embracing of the fog at this point, because I started off with my COVID brain fog, and now I've leaned in the foresight fog. And thank you always for your just incredible knowledge and experience, and the way that you are just so gracious to share that with everybody. It was really fun. It was really fun to be back in the seat.
What I can honestly say is I get as frustrated with me and with other people as much as anybody does, and looking at the way we're going, and it can be frustrating to read the news and stuff. But I just love people, I really do, because as Lila June Johnston, who's going to be our guest in November on the Global Foresight Advisory
Mhm.
Council, says, we're a keystone species. That doesn't mean that we rule things. We're
Yeah.
along with but we are important to, that's why we're here. We're important
Yeah.
to the rest of,
Yeah.
and if we understood that in the sense of warm data and Symmathesy and Aphanipoiesis and reading, then we would be tilling with it correctly. So I love people. I love you. You're amazing. I've learned so much from you, and I love that all of you join us and give us your time, and sit there and listen to us, because it's so meaningful for
Yeah.
us, and we love you, and we're so glad that you could be a part of our tribe, and we can't wait for you to join, because Peter says there has to be a part two, so we're
There will
definitely going
be.
to do a part
There
two.
will be. All right. We'll see you all next time. Have a great
Take
rest of your
care.
day. Bye bye.
Take care.